Lisa.
And I'm Suzy, and this is the Coaching Cast. We are the No Nonsense podcast, chatting about the things impacting you at work right now, helping you to survive and thrive in today's workplace.
We discuss different topics in each episode, sharing our ideas, hints, and top tips from our experiences of working in the corporate world, running our own businesses, and also being qualified coaches. We also try to have a few laughs along the way too, because taking yourself too seriously is just boring. We really hope you enjoy listening. In today's episode, we're talking about something that many of us struggle with, taking and accepting recognition when it comes our way at work. Why do we shy away from praise? Why do we brush off compliments? And how can we learn to accept recognition in a way that feels good and authentic to us? We discuss this and share some practical tips on how you can take recognition when it comes your way. So stay with us and enjoy. So, before we get into this one then, Suze, tell me, how have you been?
Hello, I've been good, thank you. I feel like we've not done a how are you section for a couple of months now because we had Victoria on last month.
Yeah, we
And
did.
then we had to postpone January's release because I didn't have a voice.
No.
So yeah, I've been good, thank you. I've now got a voice. My voice is back.
Brilliant.
So yeah, hopefully the illness is behind me now. And yeah, it's been quite a busy and big couple of weeks because I turned 40. Um,
Fabulous.
yeah, so it's been a few weeks of celebrations, which has been great. I had a really, really lovely birthday day, which happened to be on a Saturday, so bonus. Um, and yeah, I had a whole kind of day of surprises planned for me. I didn't know what I was doing until the morning of my birthday. Everyone was like, "Are you not freaked out by this? Do you not need to know?" I was like, "No, I'm cool." Like I basically said what I didn't want.
Yeah, yeah.
And then kind of left the rest up. So yeah, shout out to Steve, my husband. He did an amazing job putting together like a day of all my favorite things with all my favorite people. And
Oh,
had a really lovely time like celebrating chapter 40.
yeah. Welcome to the 40 Club. And well done,
Thanks.
Steve. Well done, Steve, for smashing it, nailing the brief. I love a surprise as well. I love surprises. I love to not know. That's
Yeah.
like, I really enjoy it. Some people really hate that, don't they? They don't like the not
Yeah.
knowing and what to prepare for. Whereas I'm like the opposite. I'd be exactly the same as you. It's like when Dom ever organizes anything for my birthday, he's always like, oh, he loves to like drip feed and tell me the fact that he's organizing things. And I can tell he's
Okay.
itching to tell me. And I'm like, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. I appreciate that you're organizing something. That's awesome. But I don't need the details. I'm looking forward to waking up on my birthday and finding out. Whereas he's the opposite. He doesn't really enjoy surprises.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I think certainly as an adult now, I think you don't often get that many surprises
Not
anymore.
good
So
ones. Not
not
good
good ones.
surprises, you don't.
Yeah.
No. No, at this
It's
age, we're
like,
getting shit surprises, horrible
yeah,
surprises, things we really don't want.
absolutely. So I think that's why I kind of quite comfortably leaned into this.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it's been lovely, and and also the celebrations are continuing. I think you said this when you turned 40. So very amazingly and generously, a lot of my friends have organised like things for us to do
Oh, that
as
is
the
so
year goes
nice.
on. So
Yeah,
I
that's
had
the
one
best.
Saturday just gone. My friend Katie, shout out to Katie. She we went to a perfume making
Oh, I saw that
workshop.
on your Instagram stories or Katie's stories.
Yeah,
I might have seen it actually because I was like, oh, that's different. That's so
yeah.
nice.
It
How was
was
the
really
perfume that you
good.
made? Did it smell
Yeah,
nice? Better than when
yeah.
we were kids and we used to like put water and
I
some
know.
skanky flowers in the garden and just like float it around and it would like turn brown when we were trying to make our own perfume as kids. I'm assuming it was a step up from that.
It was. Yeah, it was really good. And I love scent. So like I'm really, really into scent. I have a lot of different perfumes. I love perfume. Like my house always has kind of a scent, hopefully a good one.
I was gonna, I was gonna
Not
say,
wet dog.
I was about to say, I'm assuming we're talking away from Marley the dog because
Well,
yeah.
actually, maybe not this morning. Um, So yeah, I loved it. It was really, really good fun. So we got to kind of like smell all the individual kind of bass notes, middle notes, top notes, and then you
Hmm.
got to kind of say which ones you liked, you weren't sure about, and come back to them. And then you got to blend. So you got to kind of put them together and see what they smelt like together. At
Yeah.
one point, I got a bit kind of like heady because I was like, I'm smelling a lot here.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of like different scents going
Hey,
on.
sounds like a fun 40, getting high on the fumes. That's like, I mean, this shows our age now, though. Like you're getting high on perfume fumes at the age of 40, rather than you know, those days hanging out in the park in Cheltenham sniffing glue.
Yeah, yeah. So my goodness me, that yeah, absolutely. Like, excuse my voice going. So, it was really good. I really enjoyed it. And then we got like a
Good.
little bottle of it. They blended it together for you, and you got to take away a bottle of perfume.
That's so
So
cool.
it was
That's
really
so
fun.
nice.
And then
Yeah.
I've got some other bits and bobs coming up as well. I'm going to some spas and going to some live music, which is cool. So yeah, lots of celebrations, which I'm really
Oh,
grateful
wow.
for.
It sounds awesome. Yeah, good. That's the way to do it. Yeah, I did, like you said, for my 40th year, I tried to do something different every month to celebrate it. I don't know if I actually managed to achieve that. I think life got in the way at points, but at the end of the day, I felt like I'd celebrated it enough, clearly. It didn't feel like there's a gap to fill. So, yeah, it
Yeah.
was great. So, yeah, fabulous and 40. There you are.
Absolutely. And talking of celebrations, I just want to give a little nod because this episode is going out in early March. And on the 8th of March, it is International Women's Day. And we always kind of acknowledge and celebrate this every year and ongoing, actually, because that's really, really important to be working on and raising awareness of that kind of gender parity on an ongoing basis.
Mhm.
But the theme this year is around accelerate action. And I just want to kind of bring that into the conversation we're going to have today around wherever we get to in our conversation on our topic, making sure that we then accelerate our action moving forward. And yeah, shout out to International Women's Day on the 8th of March.
Awesome. Fabulous. Well, I've been hanging out with Joanna McNally in Cape Town.
Moving on, well, first off, you know I'm obsessed with Joanne McNally. I love her and her incredible podcast, My Therapist Goes to Me with Vogue Williams, one of my favorite dog walking podcasts, alongside Parenting Hell. My eclectic mix of podcasts that I listen to alongside the coaching cast, obviously. Um, right, so tell me more.
So, um, for anyone who follows Joanne McNally, like Susie does, you will have heard, I'm sure, that she's been spending time in Cape Town in recent weeks. And I have my personal training sessions at the incredible Fit on Camps Bay. Big shout out to Bridget, who is my personal trainer. Um, and there I am having my personal training session. I think it was a Tuesday. No, it would have been a Monday, sorry, because that's when I have my session, Mondays and Wednesdays. It was a Monday. And in walks Joanne McNally, and she strolls in and she goes, "Hi, I'm Joanne." And I nearly went, "I know." But I didn't. I just was like gawping like a goldfish. I was just like, "Hi," standing in my sweaty workout gear. Yeah, and then she proceeded to have her whole personal training session like right next to me while I was having mine. And I was like, this is so surreal. I have Joanne McNally literally sweating out, doing her crunches, just alongside me. This is so bizarre. And my personal trainer isn't familiar with Joanne McNally. So she had said to me, I think she's famous. And when she walked in, and I was like, yeah, she is. I then had to like discreetly explain to Bridget who Joanne McNally was and said, "You've got to listen to her podcast. My therapist ghosted me." And I so desperately wanted to say, I obviously say my friend Susie loves you, as does my friend Siobhan, try and see if I could get a selfie. But it was just awkward. There she is in her crop top and shorts, getting sweaty, doing her crunches. She's dedicated to her workout. I didn't want to disturb her, so I just had to leave it. But the whole time I was itching to be like, "Hi, love your work.
Yeah.
Love your
Oh my
podcast work.
goodness.
How's Vogue?"
Like,
Um,
I'm a fellow podcaster as well.
oh
You could have
God.
chatted about the podcasting industry.
I know, but I mean, like we've got quite different levels of podcast, let's be fair. You and I aren't on tour yet with ours. But yeah, it was so surreal. And then like that, it got surrealer because the other person who's having sessions at my gym is now this is jumping like fields, but is we're going into the world of sport now, is the rugby player Ben Young, for anyone who's listening, who is a fan of rugby like I am, plays for England. His dad has been having sessions at my gym and so regularly talking about
Oh,
rugby. I mean, Ben Youngs has like retired from international play now, but yeah, he's also got a cracking podcast as well. So I love his podcast that he has with Dan Coles. So yeah, what can I say? This is all the cool kids are hanging out in Cape Town. If there's never an advert stronger than the fact that I live here to come and visit, that should be what emphasizes it further. So yeah, I'm just carrying on hanging out with my celeb gang.
a celeb gang.
Yeah,
Love it.
what can I say? What can I say? So yes, fab. That's quite an eclectic how are you, I would have said for this
I'd
particular
say
episode.
I agree. I mean, you know, we've not done one for a couple of months, so I know it's been a bit longer than normal, but I think it was important to catch up
Yeah,
and bring
absolutely.
that eclectic mix of topics
Yeah,
together. Only
exactly.
on this podcast you would get that.
No, exactly. Or maybe how my therapist ghosted me. The other brilliant
Yeah.
conversational podcast hosted by Joanne McNally and Vogue Williams, who talk about the most random stuff, which I love, and real life. But there we go. What can I say? Joanne, if you're listening, it was lovely to meet you, and you're always welcome on the coaching cast. Um,
Oh my gosh, that would be the
cool.
dream, wouldn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it would.
Oh,
Right, shall we chat then about our topic today?
let's go.
Let's go. Let me ask you this. Have you ever been in a situation where someone has given you praise or recognition at work and your first reaction is one of these? You make a joke, you play compliment ping pong, you quickly change the subject, you write it off, you pass the recognition on to others, you immediately feel uncomfortable or awkward. Any of these sound familiar? I'm sure they do, if not all of them. Many of us really struggle to accept recognition and praise. Our relationship with recognition is often complicated. Why? The most typical reasons are those compliments catch us by surprise, or we feel like we don't deserve the praise. Cultural conditioning, because we've been taught to be humble and praise may not have been abundant in our childhoods. I think that can be also true for many of us in the UK, because I think we can be quite self-deprecating when it comes to praise and recognition. And for some, it's just simply discomfort with being the center of attention. Not necessarily true for all of us, but I think it can be for some. But the reality is, when we reject recognition, we're not just denying ourselves that moment, we're also diminishing the efforts of those who are giving us that praise. So, Suze, how good are you at accepting recognition, do you think, when it comes your way?
Great question. Okay, so I think I've become better
Hmm.
more recently. I think if I reflect back to even a couple of years ago, I wasn't great at accepting praise. So my kind of standard response would be to make a joke. And second response, normally quite quickly, would then give them would then offer something that I've not done very well or that I'd like left out or forgotten. So for example, I remember um, giving a talk. This was about 2, 3 years ago on self-confidence at a women's networking group. And actually, that day I wasn't feeling great because I was under the weather, so I had like quite a heavy cold, and so I wasn't feeling like brilliant. Anyway, I did it, and somebody came up to me after the session and was like, "Oh, I really enjoyed that. That was great. Thanks very much." And instead of just like taking that recognition, I just for some reason was like, "Oh, I didn't do this bit very well. I forgot this exercise here, or that exercise didn't land." And I remember that at the time the person was just like, "Why has she said that to me? That's so random." And I was just kind of like articulating that inner dialogue that was going on,
Yeah.
obviously, in my head. So I have kind of, I suppose, in a word, traditionally done that quite a lot. Is then like,
Mm,
in one hand, like, kind of, I suppose, heard the praise, and then in the second hand, within like a second or so, gone back with something that I didn't do right or that wasn't perfect or that I missed out or whatever it was and kind of deflected it. So it was kind of like in one ear and then literally out of my mouth with something that I hadn't done.
Mm.
And it wasn't until I started really doing a lot of work on both myself and also supporting my coaching clients with self-confidence, because this is a topic that I do a lot of work on now, one-to-one with people, that I got a bit fascinated by this topic.
Mm.
And actually, it's about the kind of acceptance of just taking that praise and recognition and that compliment. And I've got better at doing that. I know I'd have, because last week I facilitated a workshop which was a completely new group of people, a business that I hadn't worked with before, and also kind of pushed me a little bit out of my comfort zone. And
Mm.
I got some recognition at the end and some praise at the end that somebody came and said, "Oh, that's really good. Thanks very much for that." And I just said, "Thank you." And that everything in my body and in my mind, I was just like, "Thank you." And then I let it be.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I had to hold my like mouth to be like, like, oh, no, I didn't do this bit, or oh, thanks very much, and kind of like dilute that
Mm.
compliment in the moment.
Mm.
So I've had to really work on just kind of getting my rhythm and getting my practice in place for when that happens, and taking it and enjoying that moment, which is often maybe a little bit fleeting in that sense, which is a kind of conversation, but and not dismissing it by
Mm.
saying something that dilutes what that person was, their intention was at the time.
Mm.
Because actually when I do that, I'm undervaluing my worth, like my self, what I'm there to do and deliver, and the value that I offer, and that links to my self-esteem. I'm devaluing and lowering my self-esteem in that
Yeah,
moment by not accepting it. And
yeah.
so like I've had to really practice the discipline of just saying thank you.
Mm. Because what
End
drive
of.
what do you think is driving the like habitual reaction it sounds like that you've had before that you've then been challenging yourself to change? Like, whereas that previous example 2, 3 years ago when you said you were at the Women's Network and you gave that talk and you had that person give the praise and you very quickly shared with them all the things you felt you hadn't done, what do you think that is driving that reaction and where does that come from?
So I suppose without getting too deep for our listeners, or actually no, let's do it. It's from feeling that I wasn't enough. And that's
Mm.
come from various experiences, probably both in my childhood and in my early career, and
Mm.
just the kind of evolvement of getting to this point in my life. Um, and I think I realized through some of my own self-development work that that was a limiting belief I had about myself, that
Mm.
I wasn't enough.
Mm.
And I've smashed that. And I think part of the way I've done that is by really looking at it. Where's that come from? Why has that come from? Is that true? I've done some of my own work that I do with my clients on myself. I'm very fortunate to be able to have those tools in my toolkit, absolutely. Um, and I think that was becoming more apparent that
Mm.
as I was evolving in my career and in my business, that I was getting to a point where I was holding myself back in terms of my potential. And why was I doing that? Was because I didn't believe that I was enough.
Mm.
And that's where it came from, 100%. Now, I've had the privilege to be able to figure that out over time and do some work on it to kind of recondition that belief I had about myself or
Mm.
repurpose it. Um, I think, you know, you will deep down, if you're doing some of this, there's a number of reasons why that might be. And you touched upon them in the intro. But that's definitely mine, is just I'd created that limiting belief about myself.
Mm. So it sounds like in those moments where you're receiving the feedback, you're already going to a place of scrutinizing what you didn't do rather than
Yeah,
recognizing what you did do.
yeah,
And already searching for that it sounds a bit like searching for that reinforcement of that belief that what you did wasn't good enough. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And that in itself is
Exactly.
like that element of self-sabotage, isn't it? Even if it's post the moment, because it's taking away any of the ability to enjoy what you've just done or delivered and see what's good about it, because we're too quick to jump to like the opposite. It's really
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, because I
And I
mean,
think,
sorry, carry on.
well, no, I was just going to say, building off your point there, I think, there is a time and a place for reflection, of course,
Yeah.
and actually last week coming out of that particular workshop facilitation, yeah, there was a time and a place after, once kind of I'd got out of there and the dust had settled in the perspective, right, okay, so how did that go? What could I have done differently next time? What worked? What didn't work as well as I intended? And absolutely, I'm not done. We're never done. I'm still work in progress. But
Mm,
I think the difference is, which you touched upon there, is that that reflection came afterwards rather than whilst I was still in the context, whilst I was still in the moment. It came
mm,
afterwards. And so I've, was able to spend some time just enjoying the moment
mm,
and taking and acknowledging that praise and recognition that had very kindly come my way. And
mm,
that's a shift for me. No
mm,
way would I have been able to have done that a few years ago at all.
mm, mm,
So yeah, that is quite a distinctive like comparison for
mm.
sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so like I find with recognition and praise, it's mine is definitely more a discomfort around the perception, like the assumed perception of accepting it, and definitely growing up in a space where agreeing with someone when they're praising you and, if you like, enjoying that praise is an unattractive quality, that it's like arrogant or um yeah. And that's always what I think of when people praise me for anything. There's a slight discomfort for me only because I'm actually probably more uncomfortable with how I might react towards it. Because at the time I enjoy it, but I'm always concerned that I'm going to come across as I'm enjoying it too much. And then what does that say about me? And then it spills over into that
Yeah.
um like preconceived idea that I have that it's not attractive to um enjoy or enjoy or relish in praise, if you like.
Yeah.
Um and I remember when I was in New York for the very first time, I know it might have not been the first time, it was probably the second or third time, and I'd met one of my best friend's work colleagues at a party, and I'd said to her, "Oh, you look great. I really love your outfit." And she was like, "Right? Yeah, I do." And I absolutely loved her reaction because I was like, "Okay, cool. Yes, I gave you a compliment and you agree with it and you feel good about yourself." And at the time I was like, that is so American, like being really like sweeping in my um judgment of different cultures, but it felt very American to me and so not British in any way, because I don't know anyone in the UK that reacts like that when they're given a compliment. I think all of us are too quick to like sweep compliments straight out the way under the rug. I think we do it as women quite badly when people say, "Oh, you look really nice," or "I love your top," and we're always so quick to go, "Oh, what, this thing from Primark?" Um, where it's as though we want to like, yeah, like bat it away quite quickly. And in that lady's reaction in the US was just the complete opposite. She was just totally owned it and was like, yeah, I do look good. I was just like, good for you. I've never forgotten it. And I always think about it actually when people give me compliments, because I agree with the sentiment that we're talking about here, that actually be careful about how you respond to feedback when people give it to you. Because actually it is a gift, like feedback, compliment, recognition, praise. And actually for a lot of us, we feel uncomfortable doing that, like for whatever reason. But we feel uncomfortable praising other people. And so when we're offering something so nice and positive, it can be quite hurtful when people bat it back to us and seem to be quite dismissive or ungrateful or unappreciative of it. And it's definitely something I've thought about ever since this exchange with this lady in New York, and that I think of often when people give me a compliment is actually I should just say thank you because it is a nice moment for me and I should appreciate and enjoy that. And actually, it's a nice moment for both of us to share because that person has given it to me. And I should be appreciative and say, and recognize it as a gift that they decided to give me. Um, and not be embarrassed about how I react to it as such. Like, because I'm not arrogant and I'm not, yeah. But it is funny how uncomfortable we find it.
I
Um,
feel like you're getting uncomfortable
I
now
know,
thinking
just even
about it.
talking about it. I'm
Like
like, oh
your
God.
body, like, obviously I can see you, our listeners can hear you, but like I can see you on the screen and your body language is starting to change. You're starting to get a bit like shifty,
I
like you're
know.
moving
I
around and
know.
you're like, oh, I'm not sure about this. This is making me feel quite uncomfortable.
But the fact is, I think part of it is that like I like being the center of attention. And that's quite a um what do we call it? What's that word I'm trying to think of? Like uncomfortable opinion, but that's not what I mean. What do I mean? That we say there's a phrase anyway that it's like that's the truth of it. I like being center of attention, um which is not typically anything people like to say or admit to, let alone celebrate, because the connotation of being center of attention is that you're self-absorbed, you're selfish, it's all about you. I don't think any of that is true about me. I think the two are separate. I can enjoy being the center of attention without being any of those things. And I do think that's true of me, although I'm looking the people now, like my mates are like, what is she talking about? She is self-absorbed. Um, but yeah, I don't know why I enjoy it either. That's a weird one, but I do enjoy being center of attention. I enjoy people listening to me and looking at me, and yeah, I don't know why. I don't know, that's a weird thing to say. This will be one of those things where I'm like, probably should cut that out of the podcast because I don't want to admit that to the public. But I'm not uncomfortable in this being center of attention, I guess. It doesn't
Yeah.
bother me. Um, I tell you what,
I
the
think it
only difference,
energizes you.
yeah, that's true. It does energize me. I tell you, the only difference to this, there is one exception to this rule. The one time I do not like it is on my birthday.
Oh, I feel that this is getting complicated now. We're
No, I don't.
layering the bits on.
I
I was
don't
like,
like it on
this
my
feels
birthday.
like it's yeah, we're gonna yeah, this needs to kind of be unpicked in a in a
Oh God, no one's going to want to listen to that. But I don't like it on my birthday. I feel like there's a pressure on my birthday. That's what it is. That's why. Um, there's a pressure, and it is partly my own making. I have a weird birthday at a weird time of year, and most people know I hate it. And so now there's a pressure on it that I've created because people try so hard to make my birthday nice, which is lovely, but it makes me feel uncomfortable. So yeah, it's a very weird situation on the birthday front. But anyway, I think we've touched on this already. But what would you say, or what would you add, even to the benefits of accepting recognition? I think we've touched on a few of them. Is there anything you would add to those?
um no, I think we've touched on it. I mean, I think wouldn't the world just be so much nicer if we were just all gave and accepted a bit more praise and recognition? Like
Yeah,
in
well,
a
of course it
in
would
a
be.
in a genuine way, of course. I'm
Yeah,
not saying, doing it for the sake of doing it. But I think my point being the benefits are widespread, is my point, I think. And actually, it's often something we forget to do.
yeah,
Um, and if you think about it in the sense of, as adults, I mean, and, I think with children in particular, we're, I speak for myself here, I'm pretty hot on praising when a good choice has been made or there's been a good behavior. And, my child doesn't defend it or make a joke of it or, just takes it for what it is. And I think being more childlike in that
mm,
way
mm,
is so beneficial to yourself,
mm,
but also in terms of then role modeling that to others. So,
mm.
that's my final point on the benefit, I think.
Yeah, I love that, Suze. I also think the point that I want to stress in response to this question is the one that you touched upon, which is actually, I think, a massive benefit of accepting recognition is how it supports feeding your positive self-belief and your confidence. And I think the more that we accept recognition and allow ourselves to open up our minds to the positives that we do, the more we're playing in that space in a counteractive measure to playing in the negative. Because I think a lot of us can be challenged by our mindsets. And,
Oh, yeah,
you
hugely.
know, fine, there is benefit to that reflection piece and seeking opportunities to do things differently or even better. And there is huge benefit from acknowledging when we've made mistakes, but it's all with balance. Like that's never going to be healthy to stay in those spaces all the time. It will do the opposite for us. So actually just taking that time to be present and to live in that moment where we celebrate ourselves and what we've done, I just think is so important and really helps to maintain a much more robust, like productive, resourceful sort of mindset and self-belief and helps with that confidence piece. So I think that's definitely one of the key things I'd love to stress that you shared, Suze, from your experience. So let's move into the top tips then. What would you
Okay.
what would you offer as your top tips for becoming better at accepting recognition or praise when it comes your way?
So I think this isn't going to come as a surprise. We've alluded to it and touched upon it in our discussion. So my first top tip is very simple, and that is when it comes your way, praise or recognition, say thank you and stop. Shut up. Then, if you can. So start practicing just saying thank you and then done. Silence. Um, and you know what? You're going to have to practice this. This is a habit that you're going to have to create for yourself in terms
Mm,
of your response and behavior. The more you practice it, the more it will become and feel more natural for you. And I can talk from experience. The first couple of times I did this, I was a bit like, oh, but I want to make a joke now. Oh, I want to say that I didn't do as well. Um, so yeah, there's going to be that temptation there. Resist that temptation if you can, and just practice saying those two little words, "Thank you,"
I love that
and
one.
done.
And quiet.
And if you want to remember Susie's voice in that sense, that's fine. Have me on replays. Susie says, just say thank you and done. So yeah, that's my first top tip. My second top tip is around, I think just bringing that kind of remembrance and kind of awareness, I suppose is a better word, around that kind of childlike response and state.
Mm,
I talked before about, my son, when I give him praise or recognition, accepts it, and then we move like and then we move on. Um, that's brilliant. So somewhere along the line, as adults, we've conditioned ourselves
mm,
to respond differently
mm.
for various and sometimes valid reasons. Like, I get that. And that's how we create limiting beliefs about ourselves. I think the more you can reflect on doing that and being just in the moment of acceptance, like um, my child does, will really, really help you with your relationship with recognition and praise. And that sounds really simple and maybe doesn't sound like a top tip, but I think is very powerful and very effective in terms of building your relationship and comfort when it comes your way.
Yeah, no, I love
Yeah.
that. I think I would add to that is actually start giving more praise to others. Because I think it's got to start with each of us. And actually, I think if you're practicing and getting more comfortable with being in an environment where praise exists and recognition exists, and you're leading that, I think the more you get comfortable being in that type of an environment and being around that type of language and that type of exchange. And it's likely that you'll get some in return. So if you know it's something you struggle with, you're going to challenge yourself then to practice it, like Suzy's described, have the opportunity to practice how you receive it much more. And I think it's also as well, so many of us do struggle with this. So I think actually the more you give praise to others, the more you're helping other people to get comfortable with it. And actually to realize it's totally normal and it's actually a really great space to operate in where we're all appreciating one another and it's positive and we're highlighting every individual's accomplishments. And so it's never about just one person either, if you're finding you hate being in the spotlight, unlike me. But yeah, fabulous. Thank you so much for that, Suze. Really great conversation, really interesting. I read a while ago that there was a stat that said, I'd love to be able to pluck it out. It's typical at these moments. I remember these things and then don't have the stat in front of me. But there was a stat that was essentially saying that more managers find it difficult to give praise than they do to give critique. And I just thought that was mind blowing. But I do think often, and it's something to think about actually, especially if you're someone who really struggles to receive praise, by the way, is actually the more you struggle to receive praise and make that explicit in how you receive it, the less you're going to get. Because I do think a lot of the time, and I've seen this in businesses, praise doesn't exist that actively because of managers being so uncomfortable to give it because of the reactions they get from those when they do it. And that surely isn't the environment any of us want to be in. So yeah, very interesting one. Not as straightforward as you may think, I don't think, this one. Really interesting. Cool.
And
So,
also, I think just one final thing, just coming back to International Women's Day on, which is in line with this episode coming out, accelerate action is the theme. So my kind of call to action for all of our listeners is think about how you can now accelerate your action on this. So we've offered our top tips, but actually you could leave the car now when you'll drive to work when you're listening to this and forget about our top tips. Yeah, actually don't. No, try to really take this forward now and think about how you can accelerate your own personal action on this subject to just accept and offer that warm and recognizing praise.
yeah, and to lift all of us up. So a big part of this is advocation. I think accepting recognition is self-advocation because you're accepting it for yourself and you're backing yourself in that moment. But actually, you're advocating for others when you recognize them. And all of us women need much more of that and to be much more active at doing that. So, yes, take action, as Suzy says. So, I'll collate these top tips. Suzy and I will share them in the summary at the close of this episode. So, don't worry about remembering them right now. Just hang on in there, carry on listening, and they will be there with you.
It's now time for Bullshit Bingo, where we call out phrases which get commonly used in the workplace, which quite frankly make us cringe. So, our Bullshit Bingo for today's episode came from one of our CBBs, Denise, who I know listens to this podcast on her way to work and is probably now doing a little scream in the car that I've mentioned her name.
Hi, Denise.
So, are we ready? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so the Bullshit Bingo for this week is negative outperformance, which means underperformance. So this is finding a positive way to say not performing. Now, if you obviously you can't see Lisa laughing her head off at how ridiculous this Bullshit Bingo is, but this has evoked a strong reaction in you, hasn't it?
I mean, we haven't had such a clear phrase for me in a while, which epitomizes this section of our podcast and its title. Like, it's called Bullshit Bingo, and I think this is up there with being the most bullshit phrase I've heard in the history of our podcast, because this actually totally emanates what we're talking about, because I can't cope with any corporate jargon which detracts from the point of what is being said and essentially is fluffing up, what we mean. And this is absolutely
Absolutely.
nailed it. Negative outperformance. I've never even, I'm like, what the hell? Meaning underperformance. Why don't you just say, this is ridiculous? Negative outperformance.
I think this could be a top runner in our top bullshit bingos.
I think of all
Um,
time, all
of all
time.
time. Yeah. This is a great one, Denise. Thanks so much for sending this in.
And I'm so
Yeah,
sorry
it's
that you've
class.
heard it. Please tell me that you've heard it and you haven't used it. That would crack me
Yeah,
up.
no, I think just to clarify, it was one that was heard, not used.
Fine,
Yes.
fine. No
Yes.
judge. Okay, fine. You're off the hook, Denise. But I feel for you that you operate in a space where this is actively used. And actually by actively used, I hope it actually isn't, because I hope that the business is thriving and that you're doing well. But like, negative outperformance, wow. Yeah, I mean that's right up there. That is a pure
Bullshit.
bullshit bingo, that one.
Bullshit
Amazing.
of the bullshit bingos, I think, on
Thank
that
you,
one.
Denise. What a gem.
What a gem. So, on that note, listen, we love getting your bullshit bingos. So, if you heard one recently, a phrase that you think maybe might be able to compare with this one, and make sure you send it to us so we can include it in a future episode. You can drop us a DM on Instagram or message Lisa or I on LinkedIn separately. When and where you hear those corporate phrases that make you cringe, we need to hear them.
We're coming to the end of today's episode where we've been discussing why you should take recognition when it comes your way in work, but also in life as well. It's both. Our top tips and recommendations from today's episode are number one, the best of them, I think this is. When you next receive praise or are being recognized, just say two words, thank you, and then say nothing else. Sit in silence, stop that mouth, just say thank you. Number two, as we've been talking about, a lot of us find our behavior, our reactions towards praise and recognition is a habit that we've built over time, most probably from our childhood. So if we want to change it, if we all agree that accepting recognition and praise for ourselves is a positive, then we need to practice doing it. So this is about really committing to practice. Practice, practice, practice. Build yourself a new habit around receiving praise and positive feedback, recognition. Number three, Suzy's idea, loved it, around let's all lean into our childhood, our childlike states. Let's be more childlike in how we respond to praise, because our small people in our lives, they respond very differently to feedback and praise, positive recognition, compared to their elders. They just take it. They take it and they run, probably literally a lot of the time. So let's be more childlike in how we receive feedback. Suzy has been really honest and open about the work she's done in this space. It may be something you want to explore. If you know you find it really uncomfortable, if you know it triggers up a lot of negative thoughts for you, if you know it really starts to cause you to bring yourself down, play into that self-doubt space, then it may be an opportunity to lean into that discomfort and explore what's going on for me. Where does this come from? What could I do differently? So be curious, that's my favorite phrase. But yes, think about that childlike response. And lastly, actually, for those of us who want to get better and more comfortable around positive praise and recognition, it can start with us. Let's start giving more praise. Let's recognize those around us. Let's really support others, and back those people, be advocates for them, but get ourselves into a space where more praise and recognition is present so that we can get more comfortable around it for when it comes our way. So to help build on this and your skills in receiving positive recognition and praise more effectively, here's some self-coaching questions, sorry, to ask yourself, have a go at. Number one, when someone catches you off guard with a compliment at the moment, what are your most common responses? How do you currently react? Number two, what is this insight telling you? And number three, what could you do differently? Don't worry if you can't remember all of these self-coaching questions or top tips from this episode. We will place all of them on our Instagram page at the Coaching Cast this week.
So if you enjoyed this episode, hopefully you did, make sure you look at our episode on people pleasing because you might enjoy that as well. And you can find it wherever you get your podcasts. We will also have another new episode for you next month in early April. Listen, we know you're busy, CBBS, but it would also mean the world to us if you could rate, review, and subscribe to the Coaching Cast wherever you listen. It takes seconds and it's free to do. Or even tell one person in your life who you think this podcast might help. Pass it on, send them a link or a specific episode, even. It helps the podcast grow, and we are super grateful. So, yeah, please share the love.
Share it, share the love, share it all around. Hey, look, help us, praise us, recognize us by
Yeah.
sharing it with everyone, telling everyone how great it is if you enjoyed it. That would be really, really appreciated. So, we like to end each episode of the Coaching Cast with our personal song recommendation, giving you energy and motivation as you launch into the next part of your working day. It's my choice this week, and I've chosen a track, but quite frankly, if you haven't heard it, I don't understand where you've been. It's everywhere, and I am totally obsessed with it. It is so catchy, it is so good. And actually, a lot of this is about self-acceptance, and it is Messy by Lola Young. And I just love it.
Well, I'm one of those people, I've not heard it.
You've not heard it. I bet you have. I
No.
bet you've heard it and you don't know that you've heard it. You need to
Is it on
stick it
radio
on.
too?
Yeah, I actually think it probably is.
That's where I get all my current musical
I think it actually is. It's so
listening
good.
from.
Honestly, it's so good. The
Right.
album's really good as well. Honestly, go out, find Lola Young. If you're like Susie and living under a rock, go out of the rock, get up out from underneath it and go and listen to Messy. It's such a good
Okay,
song. I'm just totally
I'm gonna
obsessed
do
with it.
it.
Fab. Right. Thanks, guys, for being here, listening to us twittering on for another episode of the Coaching Cast. We love having you here. We really appreciate it. We hope you have a fantastic month. We look forward to seeing you next month with our next episode. And just remember, you've got this.